You know who else kills horny teenagers with improvised weaponry? My mom!
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Player Display. I've actually had this figure just sitting around my apartment for about a week since I got my last pile of loot from BBTS, but I wanted to pace myself. Last week we reviewed someone else, and here we are with another figure. So this time around we have NECA's Ultimate Friday the 13th. Great start to the day. 13th Ultimate Pamela Voorhees. As a certain 90s slasher would tell you, in the very first Friday the 13th movie, Jason Voorhees was not the slasher. In fact, it was his mother, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated horror plot twists of all time. And this is a really interesting figure. Firstly, when we first saw teasers, everyone thought it was a joke. People thought it was just like an AI rendering of a figure that we just never see at all, never see the light of day. So I was like, hey, that's a cool prospect. It'd be neat if we got a Pamela to join the shelf, but it's probably never going to happen. But then I think less than a month later, suddenly it just dropped on BBTS and everyone swarmed after it. I just find it so fascinating that us as collectors are really excited about a figure, which is effectively just a plastic representation of a middle-aged woman with weaponry. That's all this figure is. But it has such significance to horror and the fact that I believe this is our first female slasher ever, which is kind of a big deal. And of course, she predates Hockey Mask Jason. So this is a really important figure to have, but no one was expecting that we'd ever get this one. I think we've seen the zombie nightmare version from 2 in the retro line, and there might have been one other variant, I'm not totally sure, but we never got just standard Pamela Voorhees Friend of the Christies before, so this is a big deal, and I'm really excited about it. So anyhow, let's start off with the packaging. Funnily enough, we've never seen a Friday the 13th figure with the OG poster on it, because this is more attributed to Pamela than Jason, so that just makes sense. Up here we have, they were warned, they are doomed, and on Friday the 13th, nothing will save them. Down here we got Friday the 13th, Ultimate Pamela Voorhees. Off to the side, Friday the 13th again. Off to this side, Friday the 13th once more, as well as on the top. Like, they're still trying to hide from you who the killer is in this film. But when you go to the back, then it just tells you straight up, ooh, spoilers. So here's Pamela with a whole bunch of really crazy head swaps and portrait options and a ton of weapons. Really exciting stuff. They also have a little bit of a ingredients log down here, all the various tools of the trade that she comes with. And of course, like usual, with any Ultimate release, you can open the window, get a good look at a shot of Pamela with a really nice backdrop, and you also get her over here with all of her head sculpts and weaponry, so looking really, really great. So that being said, I got my good friends over here, Betsy and Donnie, to get this psycho killer out of her box. So let's go ahead and do that, and I will see you in a minute. As I was unpacking this figure, I think I heard a car crash outside, so if you hear any horns or yelling or cursing of the like, then that's probably from where. But anyways, last thing I forgot to mention about this figure before you get into her is she was marketed as being a limited release figure. They didn't totally explain what that meant. I think that basically means that this figure isn't going to be re-released. Like, when they re-release Ultimate figures, they get new serial numbers, maybe minor paint app tweaks and stuff like that. But for Pamela Voorhees, it's a one-time only event. She's going to be released in one wave, one batch, and then she's gone. So if you really are looking forward to getting a middle-aged woman action figure, then now's your chance. But anyhow, first impressions of this figure, she's pretty small. I mean, not just for a 7-inch scale figure, not just for a female figure, let alone a mom figure, but just looking at my size comparisons that are coming up, she definitely feels a little short and a little thin compared to what she probably should be, but that doesn't take away from how great this figure looks, and the presence. I mean, she's not intimidating, really. I mean, that's the interesting thing about this. This is, if you were none the wiser, this is basically what you'd call a pedestrian figure, right? It's not as striking as a Jason, a Michael Myers, a Ghostface, a Freddy, or anything like that. But she has the same street cred, you know? Otherwise, she just looks like a normal person. who looks a little bit erratic. Aside from that, great looking figure. So all that being said, let's pop on into, firstly, this outstanding looking head sculpt. Now, one thing people have been saying, which I do tend to agree with, is it's not a dead-on likeness to the actress. It's a little bit stylized, a little bit of caricature-ish, but you know what? I don't mind that at all. If you watch the movie in the brief time that we have her on screen, she looks absolutely berserk. So if you want to get a little bit cartoony with it, I'm okay. It looks pretty damn good. So this is the first head portrait we have. There's a big ol' stark smile, got some eyes, a little bit of a, like that mom hair, I guess. Very well painted, it's got a good wash to it. It's got primarily some yellow and a little bit of like this orange deep set into there. I think that lends to some really good contrast. Got her ears over there. I look at a little closer on her eyes. Doesn't look like the eyes are anything too special, just 2 dots, but it's fine, sells the illusion okay. I feel like maybe the teeth could have been a bit better. They seem somewhat off, and I don't know why. It looks like there's some space in between each tooth, and that space was painted white, so that seems a little bizarre. And on top of that, on some of these facial portraits, I haven't looked at all of them that closely yet, there's just these random little dark spots, like right there on that left cheek. So that's a little bit awkward. And also up here, I don't mean to nitpick this figure, which I otherwise really like, but you see that we also have some painted on eyebrows. You see that there's some sculpt up there for the eyebrow, but then the paint is below that, so that's a little bit awkward. I don't know, look at the other portraits and see what the differences are there. But that's it for our first head sculpt. Looking down to the rest of the body, she is wearing this really cute looking sweater. I wonder if she knitted this herself, but that is part of her trademark attire. Just done in blue, it looks very cozy and quilted, probably nice for a fall evening with a cup of tea, just sitting out and watching the leaves fall. Wouldn't you say? It looks really nice. But moving on down, we also have some hands. These are our default relaxed hands. She comes with quite a few, I mean, as any Ultimate release should. Down to her waist, we just have some basic black pants, and the only indication that she is a psycho killer, aside from her crazy-looking facial expressions, is that she has a little knife holster over here, so that it can also be used to complement, well, her knife that she also comes with. So, moving on down, she's got some black shoes as well. Part of me feels like maybe some dirt or something, or a little bit of a wash, I don't know what's going on with the focus here, would be a little better for these shoes, just to give them an extra little something, considering the environment that she's in when we finally meet her at the end of the film. But that being said, it's still a nice sculpt. You can custom do that if you wanted to, but that's it for the figure. There's really not much else to say. So let's just hop right into the accessories. Here we are at the accessories, the fun part. Now, of course, I'm not going to go through the effort of showing you every single accessory in every single one of her hands, but we'll do the basics over here. So first off, we were talking so much about head sculpts and portraits lately, so let's start off with those. We got 3 of them over here. Initially, just for point of reference, she comes defaulted with that big old cheesy grin, so we will put her to the side there. And over here, as alternates for your choosing, we have big old wide-eyed killer mommy expression, which looks really good. Did you call that a grin? Could you call that a grin? I'm not totally sure. But this face definitely looks a little cleaner than this one over here, where that one had like that smudge on the cheek. This one seems a little bit better. That might just be friction from the packaging, I don't know. But hopefully I can clean that up a little bit. Maybe do a little bit of repainting, or I've even noticed if you have like a pencil with a black eraser, that can sometimes get rid of imperfections on action figures. It doesn't always work, but sometimes that does do the job. So, I don't know, maybe just a little bit of friction will get rid of a few imperfections. Moving on to the other 2, we also have a big old screaming one when she's going totally ham on the final girl, and you know what, this is the head sculpt I think I cared about the most, and it looks like it's a little better executed. Again, a little bit of that smudging kind of up here on the right cheek this time, but big old gaping mouth, you got the hair again, and yeah, this one's probably the most, I'd say this one's the least cartoony looking of all of them, but all of them are great, honestly. I know that they got imperfections here and there, but I think all of them are really fun. This one's a little more fearful, perhaps, or maybe she's reminiscing about the death of her son. This is also very good, but again, subject to that big old smudge. It looks like she has some mascara running down, so I don't know, maybe you could work that into the story or something. And then more spotting down here on this cheek, but of all the head sculpts, I don't think I'll be using this one, so that's fine. Not a really huge deal, but we'll see if I can clean it up later. As for other accessories, we have 4 alternate hands. Again, she came with 2 relaxed ones. And this time, she comes with 2, I think these are identical grips. Yeah, just one for her left and one for her right. The fingernails are a little bit longer, so that's a pretty neat detail. And this should give you an idea of when I was talking about the daintiness of this figure. She feels very small, even for her traits being that she's a female character and that she's a little mom character. But yeah, they just feel kind of on the small side. But that being said, they're good looking hands, they're well painted and all that. And one useful thing is that all of her left hands comes with a little golden ring on there. So if you need a distinguisher to help you with your swapping, then just remember, gold means left, bear means right. So that'll help you out a little bit in the long run, or you're doing your photography or whatever else. And then we have 2 alternate right hands over here. One just has kind of a hole going straight down through it. I believe that is for the arrows, which we'll get to in just a second here. So this is a very specific accessory. And then over here we have, well, this is also for the bow and arrow combination. This is more specifically for when she's pulling back the string of the bow. So we might give that a shot later on. I think, at the very least, we ought to try that. Everything here is pretty standard, but the bow and arrow, that's a lot more unique. Speaking of as much, let's hop right into that. The bow is actually kind of a big standout, and the reason for that is the string is actually a thread, which is really cool. I haven't had many bow and arrow characters in action figure form, but whenever I do, it's usually a love it or hate it relationship when it comes to their actual bow, because sometimes it's just done in a solid plastic, and that includes a string. There's not a whole lot you can do with it. I mean, thinking back, I owned the Marvel Legends MCU Taskmaster, and also the Star Wars The Black Series Wicket, and both of those characters had bows and arrows, but both of them had solid strings, not even strings. It was just a rod of plastic, and you couldn't really do anything with it. So, yeah, for this one, though, you can pull it back, and you do get a little bit of warping in the, a little bit of give in the plastic itself. I wouldn't go too far back. You don't want to break anything, of course, but yeah, this is a very well-constructed piece. As for the paint, you got some good-looking wood grain over here. It has some wash. It looks very realistic, very believable. And you'll also have this wrapped up looking grip towards the top, done in a darker brown. Now, before you continue, one really cool thing about all these accessories is, of course, when you watch the original Friday the 13th, of course, you're seeing people getting killed by certain weapons, but you're not seeing who's doing the killing until the very end. So it's kind of cool how you can recreate those scenes, but now from a third-person point of view, as opposed to first-person silhouettes or whatever other camera trickery they had going on. So that makes this figure all the more interesting. Then you have not 1, not 2, but 4 arrows, which I think is more than we even need. I'd be happy with just 1, but it's so nice we have so many options. So I don't know how to present these because they're quite long, and all of them are different, I'm pretty sure. Well, these 2 might be... No, I think these are all different. Yeah, okay. I did archery way back in the day in middle school and summer camp, but I don't remember all my bow and arrow vocabulary, so I apologize for that. I think this is called the knock, the thing at the very end. That's what clips to the string on the bow. And then you have these little fins. They have a word for them. I've forgotten them. But all of them are differently colored and differently arranged, making them each unique, which is very cool. So if one of these snaps on you, then you'll have 3 others to go through. Then the most important difference to consider is down at the tips at the very bottom. 3 of them, they're just a straight up point from the rod, but then one of them is a little bit more arrowheady, I guess you could call it. That's important to mention. So when you want to slot any arrows into that arrow holding hand, you specifically want to use these 3 with just a point and not the arrowhead. So let's try that out now, just to have this a look. I hope it's not too tight, because it would suck to be pulling this out. It's a little tighter towards the tip. Once you get it down, it feels a little better. So yeah, she could just be holding it off to the side if you wanted to. Yeah, so that's doable, but I will pull that out because that does make me a little nervous, that configuration. I don't think I'll be displaying her just holding an arrow like that. Moving on, we also have a broken boat paddle, which you do see her using in the 3rd act, which is great. This is probably what I'll want to display her with. This or the bow. I'm not totally sure yet. Just because, I mean, Jason already uses these 3 in spades. So, that being said, let's move on to those as well. Big old hatchet. I actually love this a lot. It's different from hatchets that we've seen in the past with other slashers. I like how you have, like, a two-tone in the head of the axe. It's got that silver, but also some black accents as well, and a little scuffling of, I don't know if that's blood or rust. It could really go either way. If you ever need weapons to be more bloody, hey, that's the easiest custom work you can do. So I remember I got the Chucky and Tiffany 2-pack. I just bloodied all their weapons because they needed it. Also got our hunter's knife right over here. We will slot that into our holster a little bit later. This is also very well detailed. I do believe this is a unique mold. We've seen a lot of hunting knives in the past, especially with Ghostface. But yeah, it has a really nice ornate grip, probably done in like an ivory or something like that. And you also have some silver towards the bottom of the grip, and you got some silver at the guard and the blade itself. Looking very nice. And then lastly, of course, you have the trademark Friday the 13th machete. Very standard. I do think this is new, simply just based on the grip itself. I do not recognize these 5 rivets, and then that little, I don't know, that end that kind of pokes off to the side there. But otherwise, it's very well painted. I do like the application of the silver. You notice how it's it almost has some weathering here, like at the edges. It's a little lighter along this edge. And then just before it reaches the actual sharp portion of the blade. See what I mean? It's got like a slight aging to it. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but whatever they did, I hope they do it again, because it definitely adds a lot of dimension to this piece over here. But again, I'd prefer to give a machete to her son. But that being said, let's see what other weapons look like in her hands. Again, we're not going to swap on every single accessory here, but let's just go over some basics. Let's start off with trying a head sculpt. Everything has felt a little bit tight on this figure, I'll be honest with you. So I'm a little bit weary here. Wow, this one, it scares me a little bit, but all right, let's just brute it. Brute force, let's go. This one doesn't seem to want to move. Weird. You know what I'm feeling? I'm feeling that the head is not coming out from the neck. It actually wants to pop out down here, which is very concerning to me. So I'm going to want to get some hot water for that. So I'm not going to go through the effort right here, right now, but just know if you get this figure, you might have that similar issue. You'll probably want to get like a cup of hot water and cook up your Pamela a little bit, and then maybe things will turn out better for you. But I don't know. I'll give it one more shot. Yeah, I'm definitely feeling a very distinct click, like right here in the mid-chest. And that's where that neck piece ends. So that is a little concerning. So yeah, we can't do head swaps, so I will have to dock points for that. That being said, let's move on. Let's try out some weaponry. Firstly, we have the hunting knife. This should be easy. I mean, just gotta slide it right in there. Zoop, there we go. And it's easy enough to pull back out. So yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to have her with that. I mean, just have it in there and just amp up her design a little bit more. Now I really want to try out the bow and arrow. So you're going to need probably 2 hand swaps for this, right? Yeah, the idle hands aren't going to work here. Isn't that also a horror movie? Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen that. There we go. Yep, there's a good pop, and the joints are not painted. Well, the hinges are a little bit, so you might get some paint rub when you hinge them in and out, but the pegs themselves are not painted, so you will not have to worry about that. Now, I believe we will want the standard grip for the bow. Let's do that. And let's see they're fairly malleable, so that's nice. Let's pop the bow into our hand right now. I want to be careful. This is a thin piece. I don't want anything to break. And yeah, something like that. That seems perfectly positioned. I think that's fine. And maybe if bent it up a little bit, yeah, that might be better. Of course, you've already noticed by now the elbows hit just 90. They're not double jointed, unfortunately. I think it's because her limbs are quite thin, so do keep that in mind. But the next hand we will needs to be popped on as well. So let's get rid of that other relaxed hand. And I think we will need this one. I'm not totally sure how to do this. Because I've never had a figure with an actual functioning bow before. So this is kind of a big deal. Let's see though. I think you want to pull that back and slide it in between the pinky and her ring finger. And then I guess you just choose any arrow you want. And you kind of gotta rest it in there. Yeah, it's a little awkward. It's going to be a bouncing act. Turn the head. Look how happy she is to be going on a little hunting trip. So that can be done. Last accessory you'll try out, I actually want to do the boat oar over here because I feel like that's her most unique accessory, right? I don't think any other slashers used a freaking boat paddle before. So I think you can do this in several ways, really. But yeah, I'm planning on using both gripping hands and just, I don't know, slide this into here. Oh, maybe extend that grip a little more. I already did that with the bow, so it should be able to slide on in. There we go, yeah. And then lean it back a bit. And now she's got a neat, crazy little improvised weapon over here. If she had a better articulation, I took more time, I could make her look a little more dynamic, but you know what? That sadistic grin, that takes her pretty above and beyond for me, so I'm okay with that. And now it's time for some articulation, and we've already had a pretty decent look at that so far, but there are a few other points of contention here. So firstly, we have the head sculpt, which actually does a very good job with your tilt. There's your exorcist, you got your forward. Actually a pretty okay amount back. She doesn't have like long wispy hair or anything, so that makes sense. And there is a dumbbell joint in where the head meets the neck and where the neck meets the torso, but again, you can't really do head swaps unless you have some hot water, otherwise everything here is just going to pop out altogether, and I want to avoid that, so I will try figuring that out on my own time. As for the shoulders, they come out, and you will notice that there's this weird sculpt thing going on where it gets really thin up here at the armpit. I don't know why that is, but it can go back in. She can swivel all the way around, and you do have a 90 elbow, as we've discussed already, with some swivel, of course. Those were very stiff when I took her out of the packaging, so do be wary of that. I'm just noticing there's kind of some gap over here where you can kind of see the base body and you see the flesh tone in there, so that's a little awkward, but that's in the back, so it's not a big deal. As for all the hands, all of them can swivel and hinge out and back in. As for the torso, I don't know. There's probably a joint in there, like a diaphragm. Yeah, there's definitely something going on in there, but yeah, I mean, for the sake of keeping the sculpt uninterrupted, I think that's a fine exchange. But yeah, she can swivel at the waist if you like, have her tilting a little bit back and forth, probably get some forward, a little bit back. This is a pretty flexible material, so it doesn't hinder her too much. I mean, there's not much to hinder anyways. There's not a lot of articulation to begin with. Although she does have a thigh swivel, which is pretty cool. As for the knees, these are also stiff, be careful. They do not quite reach 90. I don't think you need them to go any further than that anyhow. As for the ankles, though, we have back, forward, pretty good swivel, actually. And, of course, rocker. So, yeah, pretty good figure. She serves her purpose well, but I feel like if they gave her a little bit more time, they could have added just a few more tweaks to take her above and beyond. Now, here are size comparisons. We're not going to do a whole ton here, but now that we've got her next to a Jason, maybe I give her some flack for the size differences. I actually think she might be okay. I mean, we're putting her next to frickin' Kane Hodder Jason over here. This is the only Jason I have. This is from the New Blood, of course. My personal favorite look for him. I mean, a lot of people are in the same boat as me. And of course, this is probably the Jason that you'll want next to your Pamela, being that I think they were in a photo together with this particular look, so that's kind of funny. So yeah, this lends to some pretty interesting photo opportunities for sure. I think this height difference is pretty correct. So, but that being said, let's also bring in a few 6-inch scale figures. Of course, being our good friend Star Wars Black Series Quash, who is just a little bit shorter than Pamela. Fortunately, not same height or taller, otherwise we'd have a problem. And then, of course, we have Mechamuck, who just fell down. Oops, let's fix that. You didn't see that. There he goes. Mechamuck!
Look what you did to him!
Oh! Ew! Dude!
Here we are at final thoughts, right? Got this really awesome buddy cop thing going on with mother and son, and I'm just loving it. And firstly, don't get me wrong, I really love this figure, and more than anything, I love the fact that it exists. The fact that we got Pamela Voorhees in the ultimate treatment, let alone as a standard action figure, is a big deal. I think she's very important to any slasher fan. I wouldn't even consider myself a huge slasher fan. You know me, I'm more of a Universal Monster era guy. But in terms of like just classic horror icons, I think she is necessary. I think we needed her for a long time. I'm very glad that we have her. I think she looks really awesome. She does what she needs to do. I think she's a fine figure. However, at the same time, I do feel like she was rushed out the door. Once again, as I mentioned before, we first saw like digital renderings of her, and we thought they were just mock-ups at first. We're like, oh, that's a cool idea, you know, a toy collector can dream. We'll never see it the light of day for this figure, but it's a neat prospect. And then, like, a week later, boom, she was available on BBTS and select retailers. We're like, oh, wow, this is real. Okay, let's go and get her. And that's great. It was nice that she was so readily available so quick. But at the same time, I wish that they would have just gone through the normal process of, like, soliciting pre-order images, saying, like, hey, this figure, it going to happen in a few months. And then you wait a little bit, and then the dispatches happen, we get the figure, and then per NECA, as of late, we're very, very pleased. However, but the thing about this figure, though, because they move so quick on her, I feel like they could have used a little bit more time to tweak her and make some important improvements. For me, the big thing, at least in my copy, is head swaps. The head does not want to move unless the neck moves, and that's a little scary for me. I'm not sure I'll be able to swap on the other 3 head sculpts, and there's a lot of them, right? I want to experiment with those. So that's a really big deal. So it sucks having accessories that by default you can't really use because you are risking the safety of the toy itself. There's also the stiff joints. I usually feel like that's no longer a NECA issue anymore, but because they moved this figure along so quick, there was some stiffness. There was a little bit of paint rub in there. There was some friction. She's okay now, but that was a bit scary, and it did give me some PTSD from the early NECA days, right? So that was a bit freaky. And also they could have just done some basic proportion work. I mean, she's a tad shorter than she should be. I mean, she's a short character anyways, but she could be a hair taller, maybe have a longer neck. I feel like her head's a little bit stumpy on the torso. Also, we talked about those weird little armpits. It's not a huge deal for certain angles you're not even going to notice. Yeah, just minor little tweaks to help the sculpt be a bit more realistic. And, you know, they could have gone full-on realistic with the head sculpt. Again, I don't mind them being a little bit stylized, a little cartoony, because it's a very cartoony portrayal of a human character, but yeah, I just wish that they gave this figure a month or 2. I just felt like they hit the ground running. It was like, here's a surprise drop. Here you go. And I'm thrilled about that. But at the same time, she could have been just a little bit better. Just a smidgen. That would have been nice. But that being said, I think it's a really kick-ass figure. She does what you need her to do, and she looks pretty damn good, especially when next to her boy. So, that's what matters at the end of the day. The fact that this figure exists, and it does not suck. It's a really cool figure. So, overall, I'm very pleased, but it would be nice if they just took their time a little bit. So, all that being said, thank you guys very much for watching this review. If you enjoyed them, please, as per usual, be sure to
Like,
Comment.
Ring the bell to be notified of our latest arrivals.
And subscribe.
It's never too late for Mother's Day, right? Rock on, and I will see you all later.
hey you, yeah you, check out this other video you might like on our sister gaming channel. It would be real sweet if you did. Still waiting.